And unfortunately, the other indigenous people believed the boys. They didn't have a reason to doubt them. So they would turn around and come up to the Christians and place their hands on their heads, which was a sign of great respect and friendship. But the indigenous people knew that something was not right. Colon even wrote, "They're all trembling." You can assume that these boys helped the Spanish get their first taste of tropical fruits, like passion fruit and guavas, and the most famous fruit of all, the pineapple. Around December 15th, 1492, the boys were on Colon's ship as it departed Puerto de la Concepcion, now known as Mostique Bay in Haiti. He made his way to this mountainous island that looked like it was a turtle. They named this island Tortuga. They were able to find the chieftain or the cacique of Tortuga, which unfortunately I wasn't able to find the name of this cacique, and they were able to communicate with him through these indigenous guides that they had captured. Teenage boys asked him, and we assume they're teenage boys, they could be teenage or young adult, not older than 25 years old, but they asked them out however they could, was there gold on the island, because obviously that's what Colon only cared about. Cacique informed him that there was gold on Tortuga. However, there were no gold mines like there were in Española. The cacique then told them the following, and this is what Colon wrote. He said, "The country was so rich that there is no need to work much to sustain life or be clothed, since they go naked." And even though he heard this, Colon didn't care. He was in a contract with the kings of Spain, and he was going to get gold however he could. And this is my thought. Instead of thinking, yo, like, I could stay here, not ever go back, and just live this wonderful life. But instead, he brought destruction to these people. Colon refused to get off. He was not interested in getting off the boat. And from what it seems like he was very afraid. He was scared that he was going to get killed. You can imagine that these young boys were probably very confused as to why gold was so important. Because for the Tainos and the indigenous people, this wasn't something of value. It was sacred, mind you, it was sacred, but it wasn't something that you would die for. By December 19th, Colon had started to basically drift away from Tortuga towards the coast of La Española, or Bohío. By December 22nd, he had sent some envoys to the island, and they were able to meet the cacique of this part of the island, which was Guacanagari. It's believed that Guacanagari realized the magnitude of this. He saw, obviously, these huge boats. He realized that Colon was a force. He courted him. He brought him gifts. He brought different things to exchange with. He even gave him the following, which is something that Colon admired. He said, "He brought me a mask that had 2 large ears of hammered gold, as well as the tongue and the nose." He describes it as so strong that I believe that an arquebus, which was the pew-pew that he carried around, could not penetrate it, or with difficulty. By December 23, he writes, the festivities became boisterous. He estimated that about 1,000 indigenous people approached his ship, each one bearing a gift, and it says that before they came within half a crossbow shot of the ship, they stood up in their canoes with what they brought in their hands, saying, "Take, take." Is that what they actually said? We don't know, because Colon was a big fat liar. The estimate is about 500 indigenous people swam out to the Santa Maria that day. So we know that Colon was somewhere around La Bahía de Caracol, which today is in Haiti. And these boys were being taken care of by the crew. From what we know, they weren't mistreated. They were treated well. However, they were held hostage and were not allowed to leave the ship. And this was because the previous hostages that they had tried to take had swam off. So now the Spanish were very wary about allowing people off the ship. So when they did go off the ship, they were given instructions to just interpret. My feeling is that because they didn't know exactly where they were, they might have been familiar with the coastline, But these weren't their people. I mean, where were they gonna go? And even if they did communicate to the indigenous people that they were being kidnapped, there wasn't much that could be done. It was also a respected practice to respect enslavement of other indigenous people. So it was very unlikely that the indigenous people would rescue them. He was also gifted more gold, which unknowingly for the Indians just fueled his desire. On December 24th, this is Christmas Eve, it was very calm from what Colon writes. The seaman who was steering the ship, he got very sleepy and he decided to go to sleep. And there was one strict rule on the ship of La Santa Maria, which is the ship that Colon was on, which was that the ship's boy should never be left to steer. The ship's boy was around 14, 15 years old. And so it's assumed that he was close to the age of the indigenous boys. But, you know, people tend to be stupid even nowadays. Taylor, who was steering the boat, who decided to go to sleep, allowed the ship's boy to steer the ship on this very dangerous coast. And it was by the hand of this young boy that the Santa Maria crashed into what today is believed to be La Bahía de Caracol in Haiti. Colon was furious because there was absolutely no way to get the ship out of the situation. It just began to dismantle. It crashed into the reefs on the coast. But since it was the middle of the night, they couldn't do anything. There was no sunlight. And Colon was obliged to just wait until morning so that he could send a party off to find Guanacarari to help